Hey guys, tonight, we're diving into something that's incredibly powerful, yet often overlooked: forgiveness. Imagine for a moment the heavy weight of a grudge you've carried for years, the bitterness that creeps into your mind at the most unexpected times, stealing your peace and your energy. Now picture this: that same grudge melting away, just like ice under the sun, feels like a relief, right? You probably won't survive this mental shift without feeling at least a little lighter. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And, hey, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. I always love to hear how far this little journey of ours is reaching. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Forgiveness. It's an ancient practice that the Buddha taught as a direct path to inner peace. Let's face it, how many times have we gotten wrapped up in anger over something someone said or did? Now imagine if you could simply let go of that anger as if it never even happened. No, this isn't some magic trick. It's a practice, and one that the Buddha considered essential for spiritual development. He taught that holding on to grudges doesn't harm the other person, it harms you. It's like carrying a backpack filled with rocks. Sure, the weight is there, but it's only you who feels it. So why do we do this? Why hold on to things that only drag us down? This is where the Buddha's teachings come in. Forgiveness isn't about excusing someone else's behavior or pretending it didn't hurt. No, it's about setting yourself free. The Buddha believed that when you forgive, you release the mental chains holding you hostage. And let's not forget, this isn't some New Age concept. The Buddha over 2,500 years ago was telling us the same thing. Holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. The peace you crave, it's waiting for you in that moment of release. Now let's talk about something we all know too well: grievances. They can be big or small, but they seem to pile up over time. Maybe someone cut you off in traffic, or maybe a loved one said something that hurt you deeply. Whatever the case, it's like a little seed that gets planted in your heart, and the more you water it with thoughts of resentment, the bigger it grows. It's almost like we're wired to hold on to these feelings like some sort of emotional survival mechanism. But what if I told you that these little seeds of anger aren't helping you at all? They're like weeds choking out the space for peace and happiness in your life. Humans have a funny way of clinging to grievances. Whether it's a past, wrong, a betrayal, or even just a hurtful comment, we hold on to them, nurture them in our minds, and allow them to grow. Why do we do this? Why keep such a tight grip on pain that only weighs us down? Historians still debate whether this tendency to hold on to negative emotions is rooted in evolutionary survival mechanisms or something more cultural. But one thing's for sure, it's a universal human experience. In fact, Buddhist philosophy suggests that this attachment to suffering is one of the root causes of our unhappiness. We are attached to the idea that we've been wronged, and that attachment itself is what perpetuates our pain. So here's a quirky tidbit for you. There's actually a phenomenon in modern psychology called rumination, where you replay negative experiences over and over in your mind, like a broken record. This constant replay doesn't just keep the grievance alive, it deepens it, making it harder to move past. And you guessed it. This is exactly what the Buddha was warning us about. The more you replay the hurt in your mind, the more you feed the cycle of suffering. This is why forgiving isn't just for the person who wronged you, it's for you. Letting go of that negative mental loop allows you to break free from the emotional chains that keep you trapped in the past. If you're thinking, but that's hard, how do I stop myself from holding on to all this anger? Don't worry. The Buddha had a solution for that too, and we'll get to it. Let's pause for a moment and zoom out. Picture yourself walking through a dense forest. One path is tangled with thorns and brambles, while the other is clear, calm, and inviting. Now imagine that the path, littered with obstacles, is your grudge, your anger, your unforgiven wrongs. Every time you take a step, you're weighed down by the bitterness and frustration you're holding on to. It's exhausting, isn't it? Now, what if you could simply choose the clearer, more peaceful path? That's what the Buddha is asking us to do. Forgiveness is that clear path. The Buddha teaches that holding on to anger or resentment doesn't just poison our minds, it holds us back from spiritual freedom. In fact, he directly linked forgiveness to enlightenment. It's not just a moral choice or a nice thing to do, it's a necessity for progress on the spiritual path. The Buddha understood something fundamental about the human condition. We're constantly grasping at things, whether it's physical objects or emotional experiences. This attachment binds us to suffering. If we could let go of these attachments, the suffering would cease. But here's the catch: letting go doesn't mean you condone the wrong that was done to you. It means you're choosing peace over pain. You're no longer allowing the wrong to have power over you. Buddhism teaches us that true liberation doesn't come from the outside world, it comes from within. And that's why forgiveness is so vital. When you forgive, you free yourself from the shackles of past hurt. It's as if you're saying, I choose peace over suffering. I choose to let go, to free myself from this weight. And in that moment of release, you make room for healing, both for your heart and your spirit. There's a quirky little fact that may surprise you in Buddhist culture. The practice of forgiveness is often linked with the practice of metta, loving kindness. Metta involves actively wishing others well, even those who've hurt you. It's not about pretending you're okay with what happened. It's about transforming your inner world by wishing for peace for both yourself and the person who wronged you. It's a powerful shift from a mindset of revenge to one of compassion, which is ultimately what the Buddha teaches. Forgiveness is not for the other person, but for yourself. Now that we've begun to unravel the idea that forgiveness is more about personal liberation than it is about the person who wronged you, let's take a deeper dive into the mechanics of karma. In the Buddhist worldview, karma isn't some cosmic scoreboard where good deeds earn you points and bad deeds earn you punishment. It's more like a ripple effect, a web of cause and effect that extends through your actions, your intentions, and even your emotions. Forgiveness then becomes a key part of managing your karma. When you forgive, you're changing the trajectory of your karmic path. It's like you're resetting the energy of the situation. If you hold on to anger, you're sending out ripples of negativity that eventually come back to you. The Buddha's teachings on karma are clear. Your intentions shape your world. When you forgive, you're choosing to send out positive energy instead of negativity. This doesn't mean that karma magically erases what was done to you. It means you're no longer bound to the cycle of retaliation and revenge. You're stepping off the karmic merry-go-round and choosing a different path. Here's an interesting tidbit. The Dalai Lama often talks about forgiveness in terms of it being a form of protecting yourself from the past. And when you stop feeding the negative energy of resentment, you prevent it from coming back and influencing your future actions. In a sense, forgiveness isn't just about healing the past, it's about ensuring your present and future aren't dictated by past wrongs. But there's also a more complex side to this. The idea that karma isn't just something that's done to us, it's something we create. Historians still debate whether karma is a deterministic force or simply a way of explaining the interconnectedness of actions and consequences. But one thing remains clear: the more you carry resentment, the more you're entangling yourself in a cycle that keeps you bound to the past. Letting go of that resentment allows you to break free from the grip of negative karma, offering you the chance to create new, more positive causes in your life. And when you do that, you begin to shift the entire energy of your existence. Forgiveness in this sense isn't just a practice, it's a form of spiritual empowerment. It's a way of reprogramming the emotional and energetic patterns that hold you back, freeing yourself to move forward in life. All right, let's pause here for a minute and unpack something critical. Forgiveness, as the Buddha teaches, is inseparable from compassion. It's not just about forgiving a wrong and then moving on. It's about cultivating a deep, unwavering sense of empathy and kindness toward yourself and others. Think of compassion like a muscle that gets stronger the more you use it, and forgiveness is one of the best ways to stretch it. When you forgive, you're not only releasing your own burdens, but also practicing an act of love towards others, regardless of whether they deserve it in your eyes. It's a practice of understanding that we're all flawed, that we all make mistakes, and that holding on to anger only perpetuates the cycle of suffering. Now, Buddhism doesn't teach that compassion means being a doormat or letting others walk all over you. It's not about condoning harmful behavior. It's about recognizing that people act out of their own suffering, ignorance, or limitations. This shift in perspective is crucial. If you can see that the person who hurt you is also trapped in their own cycle of pain, it becomes much easier to extend forgiveness. The Buddha teaches us that understanding another's suffering opens the door for compassion, and compassion in turn opens the door for forgiveness. It's a reciprocal relationship. The more compassionate you are, the easier it is to forgive. Here's a little fact: in some Buddhist traditions, there's even a meditation practice called Tonglen, where you visualize taking on the pain of others and then sending them compassion and relief. It sounds intense, but it's a profound method of not only relieving the suffering of others, but also cleansing your own heart. This technique teaches that true compassion is transformative, and it mirrors the Buddha's message that forgiveness is an act of love, not just for the other person, but for yourself as well. But let's pause for a moment here. Historians still debate whether this view of compassion is universal across cultures or a more uniquely Buddhist perspective. But one thing's certain: compassion and forgiveness are inextricably linked in the teachings of the Buddha. You can't truly forgive without compassion, and you can't fully develop compassion without engaging in the practice of forgiveness. The power here lies in how forgiveness, when paired with compassion, becomes not just a single act, but an ongoing practice, one that invites healing and transformation on a deeper level. Now, let's take a step into a more personal, intimate space, one that many of us shy away from. Self-forgiveness. When it comes to forgiveness, we often think about forgiving others, but we rarely give ourselves permission to forgive our own mistakes. Why is that? Why do we hold ourselves to higher standards than we hold others? Maybe it's guilt, shame, or the fear that if we forgive ourselves, it means we're excusing our actions. But the Buddha's teachings flip that idea on its head. Self-forgiveness isn't about letting yourself off the hook. It's about releasing the burdens of self-judgment that only serve to keep you trapped in cycles of shame and regret. Buddhist philosophy teaches that we are all flawed and imperfect, and that's okay. In fact, it's part of being human. The key is not to stay stuck in our mistakes, but to acknowledge them, learn from them, and then move forward with a sense of self-compassion. Self-forgiveness is a process of self-liberation. When you forgive yourself, you stop punishing yourself over past errors and allow space for growth and change. You let go of the guilt that holds you back and accept that, as with others, you too are deserving of kindness and understanding. Here's a little-known fact in Buddhist teachings. There's a practice called the Four Noble Truths that deals directly with the concept of suffering and how to alleviate it. One of those truths is that suffering is inevitable, but it doesn't need to define you. Self-forgiveness is a direct application of this teaching. We don't need to carry around the burden of past mistakes to learn from them. The Buddha taught that the act of releasing that suffering is what frees us from its grip. So when you forgive yourself, you're not denying the wrongdoing, but rather acknowledging it, owning it, and choosing to move beyond it. Historians still argue whether self-forgiveness is a purely Buddhist concept or whether it appears in other spiritual traditions. But in the context of the Buddha's teachings, it's clear you can't move toward enlightenment if you're trapped in your own self-blame. By forgiving yourself, you break the chains of your past mistakes and open up to new possibilities for personal growth and peace. Let me tell you this: you deserve to be free of your mistakes, just like you forgive others. The process of self-forgiveness is not just a step toward healing, but an essential part of your journey to peace. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be kind to yourself. So we've explored forgiveness for others and ourselves. But what happens when the stakes are higher? When you're dealing with deep betrayal, the kind that shakes your world and challenges your belief in humanity. We've all been there in one form or another, whether it's a close friend turning their back on you, a loved one breaking your trust, or even a professional betrayal that leaves you questioning everything. These moments test the very limits of forgiveness. It's easy to forgive when the hurt is small or when time has softened the pain. But what about when the wounds are fresh and raw? Buddhism teaches that the path to forgiveness, even in these extreme circumstances, begins with the recognition that holding on to anger only perpetuates the suffering. The Buddha famously said, "Hatred does not cease by hatred, but only by love." This is particularly challenging when we're faced with betrayal, as the emotional scars can feel so deeply personal, so unjust. It's as if the wrong done to you isn't just an isolated incident, but a personal attack on your very essence. But here's where the Buddha's teachings offer a profound shift in perspective. When betrayal happens, we can be consumed by thoughts of revenge or justice. But these thoughts only anchor us to the past, making it impossible to move forward. The Buddha tells us that by forgiving, we're not erasing the injustice, but we are choosing to stop being controlled by it. Forgiveness in this context isn't for the betrayer, it's for you. It's about reclaiming your power and peace. Here's a powerful fact in Buddhist teachings. One of the most challenging acts of forgiveness involves reconciling with someone who has caused immense harm. But the Buddha's wisdom shows that true forgiveness is about the release of personal suffering. Forgiving doesn't mean you forget what happened, nor does it mean you allow the wrongdoer back into your life. It means that you take back control over your own happiness and peace, choosing to stop letting the betrayal define your future. A quirky tidbit for you. Some Buddhist monks practice Tonglen specifically in situations of extreme betrayal, where they envision taking in the suffering caused by the other person and then sending them compassion. It's a form of emotional alchemy, transforming hatred into understanding and pain into healing. Historians still debate whether the Buddha's teachings on forgiveness in the face of betrayal are too idealistic. But in practice, it's clear forgiveness is the most powerful weapon we have against becoming prisoners of our own past. Now, let's talk about something that may seem almost impossible at first glance: how regular forgiveness can transform your entire mindset. You see, forgiveness isn't just a one-time act. It's a practice, a way of being that has the potential to change your brain, your emotions, and your relationships. In the Buddhist tradition, forgiveness is a tool for inner peace, but it's also a tool for personal transformation. Buddhism teaches that the more you practice forgiveness, the more you align with your true nature, peaceful, compassionate, and free from the shackles of negative emotion. Think about it. When you forgive, your mind isn't clouded with anger or resentment. It's clear, it's calm. The more you let go of past hurts, the more space you create for joy, understanding, and growth. This is where the real power of forgiveness lies. It's not just about clearing up the emotional debris. It's about making room for something better, something more fulfilling. Here's an interesting fact. Scientific studies on the brain have shown that practicing forgiveness actually changes the way your brain functions. When you forgive, it activates areas of your brain associated with empathy and emotional regulation, while calming down the regions that process anger and stress. This isn't just philosophical, it's neurological. Forgiveness rewires your brain, helping you let go of anger and replace it with feelings of warmth, compassion, and emotional resilience. Now, the funny thing is that historians still argue whether emotional forgiveness actually produces tangible psychological benefits, or if it's just a cultural mindset. However, the results of numerous psychological studies have shown time and time again that practicing forgiveness leads to better physical health, less anxiety, and a stronger sense of well-being. In Buddhism, this isn't just a bonus, it's considered an essential step toward enlightenment. The Buddha believed that by training your mind through practices like forgiveness, you're breaking down the walls that separate you from your true self. The more you forgive, the easier it becomes. And over time, you may even begin to forgive without thinking about it. The more you cultivate this practice, the more natural it will feel. It's as if you're training your heart to expand, to embrace others with kindness and understanding, no matter what they've done. And in doing so, you begin to free yourself, creating a life that's lighter, more compassionate, and infinitely more peaceful. As we wrap our minds around the practice of forgiveness, it's important to touch on a final profound concept. Forgiveness as a transformative practice that extends far beyond individual acts. The Buddha viewed forgiveness not as a one-time event, but as an ongoing process of spiritual refinement. In the same way that we practice meditation to train the mind, forgiveness is a spiritual discipline that, when practiced regularly, shapes our inner world and our outer relationships. Imagine this: every time you forgive, you're shedding a layer of emotional baggage, making room for a more peaceful, compassionate way of being. It's like an ongoing detox for the soul. And here's the kicker: over time, as you become more accustomed to forgiving others, you begin to forgive yourself more easily as well. When you practice forgiveness as a spiritual tool, you stop seeing it as an isolated act and start viewing it as a path to personal growth and enlightenment. Here's an intriguing fact: in some Buddhist traditions, it's believed that forgiveness is actually a crucial component of the Bodhisattva path, a journey toward becoming an enlightened being. A Bodhisattva is someone who has reached enlightenment but chooses to remain in the world to help others achieve the same. Forgiveness in this context isn't just about alleviating personal suffering. It's about creating an emotional and spiritual environment where others can also thrive. By practicing forgiveness, you contribute to the collective healing of the world. That's some heavy-duty spiritual work. Historians still debate whether the concept of forgiveness as a path to collective liberation is unique to Buddhism, or whether it's a universal spiritual truth. However, it's clear that forgiveness, when practiced as a lifelong pursuit, can gradually transform not just the individual, but the world around them. Every act of forgiveness sends out a ripple of compassion, making the world a little less heavy, a little more peaceful. Over time, practicing forgiveness becomes more than just a personal decision. It becomes a spiritual revolution. You begin to see the interconnectedness of all beings, recognizing that when you forgive others, you also heal yourself. And in doing so, you move closer to the ultimate goal of spiritual freedom, enlightenment. Let's take a moment to look at the big picture. The Buddha taught that everything in life is cyclical: birth, death, and rebirth. Just as nature goes through seasons, our lives are marked by cycles of growth, decay, and renewal. And in this context, forgiveness is not only a tool for healing in this lifetime, but it's also a key element in the cycle of rebirth itself. To understand this, we need to explore the Buddhist idea of samsara, the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. In Buddhism, it is believed that each of us is caught in samsara, constantly cycling through lives, experiencing suffering and accumulating karma. Our attachments, whether they are to people, material things, or even negative emotions, keep us bound to this cycle. Forgiveness, however, is one of the most powerful ways to break free from samsara. By forgiving, we let go of attachments that tether us to suffering. We let go of the negative emotions that keep us stuck in the past, and in doing so, create space for new beginnings. Here's an interesting piece of Buddhist wisdom. It's said that our past actions, karma, are what shape our future lives, including the circumstances of our rebirth. The act of forgiveness allows us to purify our karma and transform the way we carry our past into the present. It's as though with every act of forgiveness, we are cleansing the slate, giving ourselves a fresh start, not just in this life, but in the many lives to come. Historians still debate whether the notion of forgiveness in the context of samsara is a modern interpretation of ancient Buddhist teachings. But one thing is clear: forgiveness is seen as an essential practice for spiritual liberation. The Buddha teaches that when we let go of our grievances and attachments, we break the cycle of suffering and move closer to nirvana, the ultimate freedom from samsara. So as we move forward, remember that forgiveness isn't just something you do for others. It's a way to free yourself from the chains of past actions, to purify your soul and your karma, and to create the possibility of a better future. Each time you forgive, you're not just letting go of pain. You're creating the conditions for a new, more peaceful and enlightened cycle. Now take a deep breath. Let it all sink in.